Hi everyone, I'm Tanishka and this is my full moon transmission. No. Okay, so full moon in Aries. So first of all, Aries is the first sign in the zodiac wheel. So this is an opportunity for a new beginning in how we do our emotions. Okay, taking responsibility for our emotional maturity, our emotional intelligence. Why? Well, the moon is what governs our inner self, our inner child, our emotional well-being, our psyche, our soul, and it's what's to full. So yeah, this is a wonderful time if you don't want to do Groundhog Day, ground in circles, to step up so that you're creating a new playing field, the spiral, yeah, and ascending through awareness, yeah, how to do things differently, insights. So let's have a look at what personal lessons are likely to be playing out for us as we approach this full moon. And I'd like to say that, you know, even though this is going out the week before, as we really feel the energies intensifying as the moon waxes to full, these lessons are for the whole 28-day lunar month. So we've started working these already about a week ago, okay, at the new moon. So Aries is the child and the warrior, okay? It's a very masculine energy. It's ruled by Mars. Now, Mars in the patriarchal era has been known as the god of war, but Mars is simply about action, okay? So the masculine does not need to act in a warlike way, yeah? In fact, if we're in right relationship with the life-death cycle, then we take action to preserve life. And yes, that can include acknowledging endings and destruction that's necessary for birth and growth to happen. But it's not just boys will be boys and accepting that men are agents of war. That is an illusion. That is a distortion of the masculine in the mythology, which has then been enacted by the collective masculine in men and women. Okay, so for women who are predominantly operating out of their masculine, which is acting without thinking, without equal reflection. It's when the ego, the rational mind, is dominant. So we think, we see everything in black and white rather than pondering the full spectrum of color, okay, which is what we get when we understand the cycles, okay? It's a whole wheel of initiation, of understanding, of nuances, okay? We're not just divisively seeing things from black and white, which is what puts us in polarization and conflict. So in the myth of Aries, he's a little boy, okay, so that's the inner masculine in all of us, who gets locked up in a jar by two giants, i.e. the parents, the authority figures. So what this means is the rage, the anger that is within our wounded inner child is from where we were suppressed from expressing ourselves, particularly emotionally as children, okay? So whenever our feelings were invalidated, so they may have been mocked, they may have been dismissed, they may have been shamed when we expressed our feelings. And this builds pressure up in that jar so that then, like a Molotov cocktail, when there's a trigger, we can explode. All right. So the shadow of Aries is when we act like the Incredible Hulk. Okay. When we are just acting out of wound, our unhealed wounds. And when we're doing that, we're wounding others without even realizing it. Now, what's more, well, okay, no, not even more. This full moon, it's really going to become a part of the global conversation, the abuse that is caused by the wounded masculine. Okay, this is very much one of the themes in the book that I'm writing on the Grail, which is very much about addressing the shadow masculine. And at the moment on the planet, the number one cause of death globally around the world is domestic abuse for women. So the most dangerous place for a woman is with the people she loves, i.e. the men she loves, in her own home. Now, Africa is where the abuse rates are highest. And we now have, vigilante gangs in India of women going and, threatening violence as a group on the men that have been bullying and bashing up their wives. But this is not the way forwards, okay? The way forwards is love. I understand that when the man is out of balance, if you think about a pub brawl, that same energy to step in and diffuse it. Yeah, if a woman tries to diffuse it, by she's likely to get clocked in the jaw. So, we do need men to step in and to call other men on their abusive behaviors. We need transparency for this to stop, because what we have in the wounded masculine is a split where, externally they're like appearing like the nice guy, and then behind closed doors, covertly, we have the majority of men fantasizing about sexual violence to women, that is pornography, in order to get a hit of power, because their sense of masculinity is so injured because of the collective shame around what the unconscious masculine has done to the planet, to women, to children during the last couple of thousands of years of the empire's ruling, which was the shadow masculine, the Dark Lords. So in 1977, we had the new mythology come in, which is Star Wars, okay, which is Luke, the tantric with his wand of light, who's learning to harness his energy so that he doesn't cross to the dark side inadvertently by misusing his personal power. This is one of the major lessons that's going to be highlighted this full moon, with full moon in Aries next door to Chiron, who is the agent who transcends his lower nature and takes responsibility for healing himself. And this is what, through initiation, helps, that man with a chip on his shoulder, with his unresolved boyhood hurts and unresolved experiences from his early manhood, to then become an agent of healing, a mentor, a spiritual guide and teacher for other young men and boys, by really outing his own shadow, his own abusive tendencies. So, this is an opportunity to become the spiritual warrior, one who takes up the fight within and acknowledges that inner conflict, the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde split within the male psyche. Now, I'll just take a sip of my drink. Men that are in second stage manhood, so the men that have gone, well, I don't want to be an ogre, I don't want to be somebody that's just, one-dimensional and therefore a threat to all life, because their only option or their only switch is happy or angry. Because men in a patriarchy aren't given social permission to experience the full color spectrum of emotion. Okay, so they don't know how to process fear, how to process sadness, how to process guilt, how to process shame. So it all comes out as anger. Okay, there's the happy social mask, and then behind closed doors is anger. Just like children save up their shadow for the mother. Okay, they often will appear happy with their friends and at school, and then they behave badly for their mother. Why? Well, they know that their mother loves them unconditionally, that in a sense she is the safest person to be exposed to their shadow. So women that are mothering their partners in relationship, they also are the ones that cop the biggest amount of shadow in relationship. Okay, so this is what's happening with our unconscious interpersonal dynamics. So men that are stuck in second stage manhood, they're often more in passivity, okay? They don't know how to be men. They don't know how to act in appropriate ways. And so all of those unprocessed emotions come out as passive aggression. So what does that look like? Well, that's being moody, okay? A man that can't process consciously his emotional states, his feeling function, who's disconnected from his inner feminine, okay, because he doesn't have a positive template for how to access his feminine traits. He will be typically moody in relationship, okay, towards the feminine. And that may be towards a feminine male partner or towards a woman, but this is somebody who is punishing, yeah, who is withdrawing, someone who unconsciously expects his partner to sacrifice herself, to love him unconditionally, regardless of how badly he behaves or how low on his priorities he puts her through his choices. And so this is the moody boy, okay, who is unconsciously taking out on his partner all his unprocessed feelings towards his mother. This is emotional and psychological abuse. It is not acknowledged within a patriarchal culture. Yeah, there are no bruises, okay. And so it's very hard for women to even validate it as abuse and set appropriate boundaries when it is so socially sanctioned and we make excuses for the wounded masculine. So if we think about the symbol of Aries, Aries is the ram, okay, the male sheep. Now, a ram has these big spiral horns. He needs to start a new spiral, a new beginning, a new chapter, a new adventure, like the tarot, the fool. He's stepping out with his kerchief on a stick, out to do things differently from his past. All right. Now, we've all been sheeple in the patriarchal times. Okay. The empire's ruled through domination, intimidation tactics, using fear and guilt, and this was introduced through organized religion, okay, the religion of the empire, which was, you know, the three patriarchal religions that introduced a monotheistic god, he, the distant sky father, who ruled with lightning bolts and anger, who basically intimidated with rage, with vengeance. And so we've all been sort of kept in our box as, you know, the angry boy. But this is about us not just being angry sheep, okay? An angry sheep just butts his head against things. All right, we need to say, well, what are we going to do about this? I don't want to be a sheep anymore. I want to individuate from my conditioning, from my conditioned mind. Yeah. So in order to start this new adventure, we need to transcend acting out in abusive ways, because looking at our dark side is too hard, is too confronting. All right. We will only stop the endemic cycle of abuse by looking at how we're a part of it, whether we're enabling it by staying with someone that's abusive, by not setting appropriate boundaries, by not speaking up, or whether we're the ones perpetuating the abuse by not acknowledging that we are wounded and taking responsibility for healing ourselves, so that we're not acting out rather than reflecting on ourselves. Now, we have 5 planets in cardinal signs this full moon. cardinal signs are the first sign in the four elements of water signs, air signs, earth signs, fire signs. Cardinals is initiating energy, new beginnings. Now, if we include the planetoids Chiron and Aries, we've actually got 7 in cardinal signs. So this is moving forwards time, all right? And we've got Jupiter, this full moon, forming a trine, okay? A harmonious triangular aspect to the moon, which inspires us to expand. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system. So it's encouraging us to get bigger. How do we get bigger? Through love and growth, okay? How do we get smaller? Through contracting into fear, okay? And refusing to grow. Be stubborn, okay? So this is a time to face our fears, the fears within us of the rage that's unhealed, how we can act out in ways that are, wow, this most incredible red little bird that was fluttering like a hummingbird making that sound. I've never seen that bird before. How interesting. Gee, I wonder if I can turn the camera around so you can see them. There's a few of them. Anyway, sorry to interrupt. I love that. Okay, so where was I? Full moon. It's the time of illumination, okay, because this is when the moon, which is the feminine polarity, is at its fullest light. So it's when we have aha moments. Yeah, when the soul, we get intuitive downloads. It's like, oh, I can see clearly now. The rain has gone. So we are going to get wonderful insights now into the cycle of abuse, how we've been complicit, how we've been a part of it, and how we can address that paradigm of war and restore peace through healing the conflict within us that creates war externally. Okay, so the interpersonal lesson, we've got Mars, as I said, the ruler of Aries, in Libra. Now, Libra is the opposite sign, okay? So we have the Sun in Libra and we have Mars in Libra. They're two most masculine planets, all right? And they're in sign of how do we make things better? Yeah, the peacemaker, the one who is seeking resolution. They're saying, I don't want to be like this. I don't want to create destruction instead of love. Can we talk about this? You know, how can we collaborate? How can we co-create? And we've got Aries. Okay, so Aries is like chaos, destruction, storms, the dark feminine conjunct this full moon, conjunct the feminine. So she's the one going, I'm fucking angry. I'm angry about, you know, all the abuse that's being done by the masculine personally and on a global scale. I'm angry about the impact on my child, on my children. So he's kind of out of his comfort zone, and Libra going, how do I make things different? And she's the one who's like, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it, to quote that wonderful film Network from the 70s. So the first thing is we have to acknowledge the anger, all right? We can't just sweep it under the rug, because that actually makes women more angry, okay? Because that's what's been expected of us during patriarchy, that we wear it, that we be good women, that we be the mother, that we put up with it. So it's like red rag to a bull to go, oh, you know, maybe you could just be friends with him. You wouldn't say that to somebody that had, you know, just taken you to hell and back and traumatized you if you understood the abuse. So the first thing needs to be education. It needs to be understanding. And that's where Libra is wonderful. Libra can make sense of it. Libra can use words, understanding that the sword is not mightier than the pen, but the sword of truth, Excalibur, intuition is. So, sisters, this is a time to write, okay, to speak, to be the peacemaker through your words, creating understanding, rather than bottling that up and, just exploding with rage. Now, that motorbike past just reminded me to say, this whole month, roads. So be extra and be impatient. For that is, Aries can be the hothead, likes to feel, which can be a loud or a big and road. So just make allowances. The masculine and women behave in a erratic. Now, for those of you suspect those is in a domestic situation, make it very clear sanctuary, because when to a head, particularly around the full. Okay, not sure whether or not how much we lost of the recording, but things are likely to ahead for the full moon. That's the 14th of October for people on the progressive side of the date line, and for those that aren't, the 13th of October. So just don't take unnecessary risks. If your intuition is saying don't go home, listen, okay? I predict that this is probably a time when domestic violence shelters will be inundated, and possibly ERs, police stations with reports of domestic violence. So, don't be afraid to get involved as community to support those that are being victimized. All right, so and that can be emotional and psychological abuse as well, okay? So, dare to ask questions if people don't look okay. And this can also bring up PTSD for people. I experienced this recently, and it was a complete surprise to me, but it really illustrated the impact of what I'd been through. And you might see I've got a big bruise on my arm. But it's kind of like my Girl Guide badge for being able to speak up on my own behalf and set a boundary to protect my vulnerability, because I experienced PTSD, post-traumatic stress symptoms that seem quite irrational, but it was during my moon time, which is when, of course, we're most sensitive. And I needed to speak up and say, would you not approach me, please? Because it's triggering a fear response because of all of the emotional and psychological trauma that had accumulated within my nervous system. And as I was returning my moon flow to the earth, mother, to my garden, a big spike about that long penetrated into my arm. And, I stood there crying, sobbing like a child as blood was running down my arm, and it was a bloodletting onto the earth. And this is what, of course, has happened during the patriarchy. We've had blood shed rather than the sacred blood being returned to the earth, because we haven't been in right relationship with the life-death cycle. Again, these are themes I'm speaking about in the Grail book that I'm writing at the moment. But this tree, part of me wanted to respond in fear and go, God, I want to tell my landlord to get rid of that godforsaken, dangerous tree at the front door. But traditionally, people would plant holly, trees with spikes cacti near the front door as a guardian of protection. And so I realized that this spiky tree had given me its medicine. All right. Now, I'm not somebody that takes plant medicine. I'm so sensitive, and women were menstrual shamans. So our way of doing a deep shamanic shadow work is by working with our cycle. But this tree had gifted me the medicine of protection and acknowledged that I had learnt that lesson to speak up, which is the lesson of the warrioress, of Artemis, who governs the throat chakra, to be able to create safety for herself. And I woke up the next morning and I felt like I had slept more deeply than I had in I don't know how long. And I felt safe for the first time that I don't know how long, because I had found that inner protector, that inner woodcutter, like in Red Riding Hood. And I'm an empowered woman. I have been speaking up on my own behalf for a long time. But, it's a constant practice that we keep making life safe for our souls that are vulnerable, that are sensitive, if we want to be able to stay in our heart and be transparent in the world. So this is very much the lesson of the Magdalens, that, through the descent that we go through into understanding the darker side of humanity, of ourselves, the human psyche in general, we have to make sense of that. And we come back with self-love as the resurrected heroine or goddess. And from that self-love, we set boundaries. We have conditional love. It is an unfair and patriarchal expectation that a woman should love unconditionally, or that a conscious man should love unconditionally. No, it is appropriate that we learn to set boundaries based on awareness, based on the shadow that we see with our awakened third eye. If people aren't taking responsibility for their shadow themselves, then we have to enact boundaries. We can love people unconditionally from a distance. We can have compassion for the woundedness that is causing them to act out, but not expose ourselves. That is not self-loving. So the carnage will only stop when enough people set boundaries from a place of self-love. And this is what we're doing now that Saturn is moving forwards. This feels like a pandemic right now of us all ending patriarchy as we approach the Pluto and Saturn conjunction on January 12, which will be conjunct in and out for most of 2020. It's about boundaries. Boundaries are an act of love that create awareness, okay, about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable behavior, knowing that we can still love someone but not love their behavior and not wear it. So this is very much a part of the education, so that the unconscious masculine in both men and women doesn't destroy relationships out of immaturity. Okay. Now, with the Aries moon, we can polarize into independence. In other words, I'm never having a relationship again. All right. Now, a lot of women that are Artemis dominant, how interesting, as I said that, I'm feeling my ophthalmic nerve tingling, which is where I had shingles in response to the actions of, yes, another unconscious masculine incident in my life, but I won't go into that. So, back on track. My body, the more our bodies inform us of the boundaries that we need to take to restore sacredness and the sanctity of the sacredness of life. Now, this morning in meditation, I had Shiva come, And Shiva is the god of death, okay? And he is, in a sense, the equivalent to Kali Ma, okay? Kali Ma is the goddess of death. They are both sacred. They are both the ones that help us to process what we've experienced that was painful, that induced suffering and trauma, so that the past can remain in the past. The past can be truly dead. But the past is not dead. It's a skeleton in the closet if we don't deal with it. So Shiva and Kali, we can call upon them to help us to process the past so that we can be free. They are both soothsayers, truth speakers that help us confront the truth, and only through the truth can we process and acknowledge what actually happened, so that then we can have all our energy fully available to us in the present. All right, Kali is time. So if we want to create a truly powerful future, yeah, what we need to do is reflect, process the past so that we can be fully available in the present and not unconsciously create the future projecting from an unprocessed past, which is when we create trauma, okay, when we create from fear. So this is about us not being limited by our past, resolving our past, not just acting out which is shadow Aries. Now, I do want to make the point, I'm on and on. This is all of us, okay? I'll often see comments saying, what if I'm a Sagittarius? When they're in concert, forming different aspects, what's the word? Not geographically. Geometrically, thank you, then it impacts us as tiny little oscillating bits of energy, okay? So these huge cycles are impacting us. This is the wisdom of the feminine that helps us to make sense of the chaos so we don't fear life and we don't fear fate. You know, I was reminded this week that happiness comes from the Latin root to happen. So we create happiness when we can accept what has happened, when we can make our peace with it, when we can see the lesson and the blessing in it. And I'm so blessed to be in Bali, where the Balinese people are the happiest people I've ever been around, because they truly accept their fate. They accept what they've created and where they are now. And this, again, is the cyclic wisdom of the feminine. This is understanding we are creating our fate. We are the result of our karma, of our choices. So we are not victims. Every bit of suffering, we can go back and trace it to a choice we made, even if that choice was before we incarnated as a soul. Okay, this is the lesson of Chiron, who is, you know, right next to the full moon, saying, hey, you're not a victim. You chose this story because you knew that you had the power to transmute it, to heal it within yourself, for the lineage and for the whole collective. So start honoring yourself as a powerful shaman. Recast the story. You are not a victim. So Mercury is going to go retrograde, bang on Beltane, Halloween, the next seasonal chakra vortex gate, which is the gate of death and birth. That is giving us an opportunity to reflect on how we can create growth, because that's what death and birth is. It's a gateway for growth through understanding our past actions. We've got Mercury moving, it's already moved into Scorpio. So, whoa, this is a time of deep, meaningful conversations, recognizing the truth, owning our shadow. Venus is moving into Scorpio on the 9th. So, you know, we're going to be having conversations with our friends and with our partners about some of the shadow dynamics we've experienced in relationship and the impact on us, on our heart. So we have the sun moving into Scorpio on October 23. So all of this is taking the psyche deep, all right? Now, if we're not going deep, if we don't want to go there, if we just, everyone's lovely, love light, blah, blah, what's going to happen is we're going to feel magnetically attracted to someone who is our disowned shadow, yeah, or someone who has the shadow lessons that we've done in the past before, okay? They might abuse us like our parents did, but the attraction, we're like, I've just got to have this person. I've got to have sex with them. I've got to have union with them, because we're not having union with the shadow within us. So if you don't want to go headlong, jumping in sexually to a relationship, bonding in the base chakra and creating more trauma, bringing more stuff up out of Pandora's box to unconsciously journey, do the shadow work, journal, look at what you don't want to look at. You might find my videos on navigating a downward spiral and on sacred power of blood, sex and death, particularly powerful at this time. And stay tuned, I'm bringing out a challenge for those that want to journey that collectively when the sun moves into Scorpio and when for that whole transit. So with Saturn direct, Saturn is the planet of responsibility. So this is the time to put in that shadow work, knowing that you will get the rewards. That for those of you that are polarized in independence, going, I'm never having a relationship again, know this. More and more people are embracing the need for shadow work and for having the psychological and emotional depth that is required to be in right relationship with the dark within ourselves and within the dark side of life. They are embodying Shiva. They are embodying Kali, these beautiful divine aspects. So don't cut yourself off and become the frigid ice maiden on ice, putting your own feelings on ice. This is an opportunity to go deep, to feel that we get out of the pit. Yeah, that is the way out of the labyrinth of the underworld. So do not suppress your emotions or you'll remain in the underworld depressed. We have on the 12th and 13th, so again, bang on that full moon, Venus in Scorpio, okay, opposite Uranus in Taurus. So Uranus is the planet of Kundalini, wake up call, sudden getting it. In Taurus, which, it just wants love, it just wants everything to be nice, and it kind of can just get a bit complacent, a bit settled, a bit dug in, a bit stubborn. So we are going to be shaken up from our comfort zone into how we have to transform personally if we want to transform our relationships. We also have the sun and moon forming an exact square. That's a 90-degree angle. That's a challenge. This full moon from Pluto, that's Hades, Lord of the underworld, challenging us to step up and stand in our power. How do we stand in our power? By looking at what is disempowered within our psyche. Where are the unresolved traumatic experiences in our psyche? When we go back and face those, we reclaim our personal power. All right. So if you're nursing feelings of mistrust, betrayal, if you've got secrets that you're keeping close to your chest, this is all forming emotional toxicity. You can cleanse and have as much coconut water as you want, but if you're not dealing with the emotional toxicity, then you are a nuclear bomb that is waiting to be detonated, whether that's imploding with moods when somebody triggers your unresolved issues, or exploding like a bomb and destroying all life within your vicinity. So we've got Uranus opposite Venus. Expect unexpected developments. particularly in relationships. This could be meeting a new partner, okay? So don't completely cut yourself off from the possibility. But the key is, with everything moving into Scorpio, and while we've got this crossover of Libra Scorpio, it's how do you address the shadow in relationships? How do you address conflict in relationships? And with Jupiter conjunct Ceres, which is the mother, this is, we're going to mother ourselves by setting boundaries based on self-love, okay, by listening to our feelings, taking full responsibility for processing our feelings so that we can expand into our potential as sentient beings, rather than and that's trine to the full moon in Aries, a beautiful supportive energy, and cyclic wisdom. This is, the wisdom of the mother, the wisdom of the cycles, understanding how that puts us through initiations of the light and the dark. So that's everything I've got. I hope it's helpful and insightful. Feel free to share this with anybody intuitively you feel to share it with. And if you want to find out the resources that I have to assist you, you can go to my website, themoonwoman.com, okay, and check out, there's books and videos and meditations there, as well as online courses and video tutorials. All right, so blessings on your full moon. We are all in this together. We are all walking each other home. I think that's misquoting Rumi. So remember that we're all doing our best and we're all trying to heal our wound. No one is intentionally wounding you. It's all coming from their own suffering. So compassion, but not without boundaries. All right, blessings this full moon. And may we do what needs to be done. Take right action.